We've probably all heard that data centers use copious amounts of water and that they're bad for the environment. Admittedly, I have abstained from using AI for this reason, but I haven't really looked into the research until now. As a desert dweller, I want to know the unique challenges and potential issues that come with data centers in the arid Western US. How do data centers impact the local water supply and energy grid? What legal challenges come with water allocation to new and expanding data centers? And will there be enough water for data centers and the growing Western cities? All of that and more will be answered. Now, the reason I am making this video is to prove someone wrong. One of my friends got in a little spat with me over data centers, and this is my research backed retort. So, Jacob the Disney adult, this one is for you. Without further ado, let's talk about data centers, baby. Not a good transition. These days, data centers are often associated with artificial intelligence, but data centers have been around for a long time, since the 1940s. They're buildings that have computers which store, process, and transmit data. More recently, they're being used to train AI models. Training AI models takes a huge amount of computing power, which requires a lot of energy. One statistic from the International Energy Agency states that one large data center uses the same electricity as 400,000 electric cars. This is because conventional data center services run on CPUs, while artificial intelligence uses GPUs. CPUs are great at performing one task, while GPUs can handle a bunch of tasks all at once. When talking about CPUs, imagine a person with a paintball gun trying to draw a photo of a smiley face. Now, for a GPU, imagine 200 paintball guns going off all at once, creating the image of the Mona Lisa. That's the difference. And you can probably guess which one uses more electricity. Another statistic from the International Energy Agency estimates that ChatGPT uses 10 times more energy to compose an answer than a Google search. That sounds like a lot, but is it? Researchers at the University of Michigan conducted a study using a variety of AI models to gauge energy usage. The smallest model that they used consisted of 8 billion parameters. The largest model they used consisted of 400 billion parameters. Parameters are the internal learnable variables that the model adjusts during training to recognize patterns and make accurate predictions. In essence, more parameters means better language learning and likely more accurate responses from an AI model. More parameters also means more energy usage because there are far more variables to consider. Researchers found that the smallest AI model for a single query used 114 joules, which, if you aren't an engineer, you probably don't know what that means. Anyway, let's break it down. 114 joules is the equivalent to about 1/10 of a second in the microwave. So, not very long. The largest AI model used about 8 seconds in the microwave, so a bit longer. Now, that doesn't seem like a lot, but OpenAI receives 2.5 billion prompts per day. So add that all up.
Okay, prepare to get your mind blown. I had to do this calculation so many times because I was in shock. So 2.5 billion times that 8 seconds. And I'm using that 8 seconds because it's similar to ChatGPT. Then I divide that by 60 seconds, then divide that by 60 minutes. That gives you about 5 million hours in the microwave. Then we divide that by 24 hours in a day. That gives you 200,000 days. Then we divide that by 365 because there are 365 days in a year. And that gives you an insane number. OpenAI receives 2.5 billion prompts per day, and that's the equivalent to 634 years in the microwave.
Especially if people are generating the AI videos. I'm sure you've seen the AI videos circulating, and perhaps you've been tricked by a few. I know I have, sadly. While the researchers found that image generation and even asking ChatGPT to write a report for you may not use a lot of energy, the video generation definitely does. The researchers asked an AI model to generate a 5-second video, which had about 16 frames per second and had the quality of an early silent film type movie. The energy that was used to create this video was the equivalent to cooking something in the microwave for, can you guess? You probably won't. 1 hour. 1 hour for a 5-second video with really bad quality. That's crazy. Now think about all of the Soros videos that look pretty realistic. Yes, imagine all of that energy. Crazy. Anyway, between 2014 and 2023, electricity consumption at data centers tripled, according to the Lawrence Berkeley National Laboratory. It's predicted that by 2028, data centers will use more electricity than 25% of households in the United States, which is about 29 million households. Currently, there are just over 5,000 data centers in the United States, the majority of which are in Virginia, followed by Texas and California. Data centers' growing demand for electricity isn't great because most of our energy still comes from fossil fuels. And with the current administration, that's not changing anytime soon. So, why is this a problem? Well, you probably know that fossil fuels are the main impetus of climate change. Areas that are wet are getting wetter, and drier areas are only getting drier. And if you are a desert dweller like me, water scarcity is always in the back of your mind. And you may have heard that data centers use lots and lots of water. And many people are worried that the data centers won't leave enough water for the rest of us. But before we look into the rumors, let's understand why data centers use so much water. If you're like me, you probably have 15 tabs open at a time on your computer, and the fan is just whirring like crazy. Now imagine a whole building of computers transferring and processing data. It's bound to get really hot. So data centers need a way to cool off those computers so they don't overheat. Here's how it generally works. Inside the data center are cooling units. These are often called CRAC units. These pull in warm air from the room and pass it over cold pipes filled with chilled water. The water absorbs the heat and flows into something called a chiller. The chiller's job is to remove the heat from the water so it can be reused. Inside the chiller is a refrigerant, similar to what's in a refrigerator. The warm water gives up its heat to the refrigerant. The refrigerant then carries the heat to another part of the system. And there are two common ways that this heat is dumped. One way is that large fans blow outdoor air over pipes to release the heat directly into the atmosphere. Another way is heat is sent to a cooling tower outside where warm water is sprayed into moving air. Much of that water evaporates, going back into the atmosphere. According to the EEIS, approximately 80% of the water withdrawn by data centers evaporates. What doesn't evaporate gets recirculated, but it can only get recirculated so many times. Minerals such as calcium, magnesium, and silica accumulate in the water, becoming more concentrated with each cycle. And these minerals can damage the cooling towers and other equipment, making them less efficient, necessitating fresh water eventually. Once cooled, the water is sent back to the cooling units to absorb more heat from the data center. I've heard it more than once that most data centers predominantly use gray water in their operations, which is not true, Jacob. While gray water use is growing and a key sustainability strategy, it currently makes up a small fraction, just under 5% of total water withdrawal for the average data center. For instance, Google employs some reclaimed or non potable water in over 25% of its data center campuses. And that doesn't mean that 25% of their data campuses use a majority of non potable or reclaimed water. That just means they use some. But we don't actually know what that some is. I could not find data for that, so most data centers pull water directly from the municipal supply for their cooling, which is our drinking water. And the reason that they do this is because of the low level of dissolved solids in the water. In other words, there are few minerals to gum up their cooling system. On average, alternative water sources contribute less than 5% of water used by the typical data center. These sources include on-site groundwater, surface water, seawater, or produced water, which is a byproduct of oil and gas extraction. And some also use rain harvesting systems. Google stated that 22% of their total data center water withdrawal, excluding seawater, was reclaimed wastewater and other non-potable water in 2023. Where data centers get their water varies based on company and region. For instance, Google's data center in the Dallas, Oregon, I think that's how you say it, consumed 29% of the town's total water supply in 2022. 29%. Well, some companies based in cold and wet climates don't have to worry so much about water usage and where it comes from. Those in the desert do. In Nevada, the country's driest state, the recent growth of generative artificial intelligence has put increased attention on data centers' power demands and the water needed to cool servers. Out of a list of 23 data centers provided by the Las Vegas Valley Water District, the city of North Las Vegas, and the city of Henderson, estimated water usage in 2024 was more than 716 million gallons. Google's site had the highest estimated water use at roughly 352 million gallons. That's nearly. Cole, you are literally moving that. Get out of here. 352 million gallons. That's nearly 1,081 acre feet, or roughly enough water to serve 540 single family households for an entire year. Crazy. A facility like that would not be built today in southern Nevada due to recent changes in local regulations. Evaporative cooling mechanisms are southern Nevada's second largest consumptive use of water, exhausting nearly 10% of southern Nevada's Colorado River allocation annually. Because of this, in 2024, the Southern Nevada Water Authority voted in essence to place a ban on the installation and use of evaporative cooling mechanisms in new commercial and industrial buildings in the Las Vegas Valley. Yay! But previously approved data centers do not have to follow this rule, including Google's data center that has the highest water usage, that 352 million gallons, which may continue to rise. We'll see. Now, many people may argue that all of this water being used by the data centers isn't being wasted because a lot of it is just going back into the environment through evaporation. Well, true, the dispersion of that water when it eventually falls back down to earth as rain is unequal. The water evaporated in Las Vegas isn't necessarily going to fall back down to the Las Vegas Valley and re enter the water system. It's going to fall as rain in a region that gets more water. Even if the water does fall back down to Las Vegas as rain, it's not guaranteed to re enter the surface or groundwater system, especially with the nearly impermeable desert soils here. There. So, the big question on my mind is, are desert cities screwed? Well, maybe. We might be. Water rights are a big thing in the western US. There's only so much water, and everyone wants a claim. But claims are not divided evenly. It's on a first come, first served basis. If you want a more in depth explanation of water rights and its messy and deadly history, you can check out this video. This video? Some video. There's going to be a link in the description. But the important thing to know about water rights is that people who have claimed the water first have seniority. And if they aren't getting their full allocation of water for some reason, the local government can basically shut off the water for the junior rights holders until the senior rights holders gets all the water they have been allocated or promised. Now, basically, all the water that exists in the West has been claimed, and it's actually been over allocated, meaning there are more rights holders than there's actually water to give out. So, how does that work? It doesn't. Specifically in Nevada, people own more water rights on paper than the amount replenished each year in more than half of its hydrographic basins. So, what happens when new water sucking industries like data centers move in? Well, that's a convoluted and somewhat scandalous question. On December 12th, 2025, Adam Sullivan, the Nevada state engineer for the Nevada Division of Water Resources, was fired. It was the first time that a water regulator was fired since 1981. He must have done something really bad, right? Not exactly. Nevada state engineer is the person responsible for managing water in the nation's driest state. Adam Sullivan is best known for his involvement in Sullivan v. Lincoln County Water District, which was a case brought to the Nevada Supreme Court and decided on in 2024. This case established a precedent for the state to manage groundwater and surface water conjunctively and to recognize the interconnectedness of groundwater systems as one superbasin. Previously, groundwater and surface water were managed separately, which led to issues of overappropriation. Water laws give the state one tool to address issues of overappropriation, and that's to curtail junior water rights until senior water rights have been made whole. So basically, turning off the water for the junior rights holders. To do that, Sullivan admitted could potentially devastate local communities and economies up and down the river system, not to mention make enemies of the developers, mining companies, and others that want expanded access to water. Up north in the Humboldt River Basin, river depletions are getting worse due to groundwater pumping, and so are conflicts between senior and junior rights holders. For example, Adam Sullivan sent a cease and desist letter to Thacker Pass lithium mine demanding that the mine cease groundwater pumping at the request of a local rancher who was a senior rights holder. Sullivan said that he and his staff had been holding public meetings regarding curtailment and was working with affected groups and individuals to find ways to potentially resolve the conflict with minimal economic effects. Sullivan's boss emphasized that it was important to avoid curtailment of water rights and asked the governor to establish a blue ribbon commission to address the problem. Sullivan stated that there were many disagreements about water management between he, his boss, and the governor of Nevada, Joe Lombardo. Sullivan stated that he often felt pressure from his superiors to rescind decisions, accelerate decisions, withhold decisions about water management, and to not attend public meetings regarding water management, which seems a little bit whack because he's the face of water management and in charge of water management. Water conservationists state that applications and requests related to water rights often require lengthy considerations and urge that state officials should take the time necessary to work through them. That makes a lot of sense. Despite the pressure, Adam Sullivan submitted a curtailment draft order, which was designed to be a starting point for public input and to help stakeholders understand what curtailment could look like and begin shaping practical, community-driven alternatives before any final decisions are made. Still, many water users perceived it as moving in the direction of curtailment, and that was likely the nail in Sullivan's coffin, so to speak. With his termination coming soon after and a statement from his boss signaling the department's desire to move in a different direction. Now, if Sullivan is replaced with a regulator who is more willing to make appropriations in places where scarcity exists, this could be a detriment to the state of Nevada and surrounding communities that rely on their water, such as Arizona and California. It is a very real possibility that Sullivan's departure could open the door for erosion of public interest protections and undermine senior water rights holders to make way for new industries. While potentially good for the economy, it may be bad for long-term desert dwellers, but only time will tell, as they say. Businesses should have a vested interest in the community surviving. So you would hope that innovative solutions will emerge as the unending drought persists. That's my hope, at least. Well, there you have it. The verdict is in. Jacob, I will be waiting for your prompt response in the form of a 10-minute YouTube video. Thank you very much. If you enjoyed this video, if you learned something, leave me a comment down below. It really encourages me to continue making content like this. And please subscribe for future geology or environmental adventures. That was awkward. Okay. I will see you next time, and hopefully my space will look a little bit better. I have right behind me, I have two 4x8 panels of wood. Don't ask me why, but I do. And it doesn't look very pretty. I at least put a nice little bed sheet. I'll throw a little nice little bed sheet on top of them. You can't even tell. But soon I'll have a cute little backdrop. Not that you guys actually care, but maybe some. Okay, anyway, bye.